Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have an upload that I wasn't going to put out, but I don't know what's going on with Victor. I talked to him just a little while ago, so maybe I can do an interview with him later today and put that out. Not really sure what to do, but I wanted to give you guys an upload. So before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. They are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. The links to those are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have an exciting and terrifying set of encounters to share with you. Before we get into those, a couple links I'd like to share as well. As you know, I rely on Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. They are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. The links to those audiobooks are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Today's first experience. Hello, everyone. My name is Joe, and I'd like to share my encounter with you all. On the evening, I saw the hyena-like animal I was hunting along a heavily wooded exploration trail that looked fruitful for rabbit. I generally hunt alone, but I do carry a shotgun because all too often, during these often successful rabbit and grouse hunting journeys, black bears and the occasional wolf pack are nearby, and a .22 rimfire is poor caliber for self-protection here in northeastern Alberta. During my hunting walk along one of these west to east goat paths, I noticed a turkey vulture was overhead, and if you watched your six, an owl was following me. This is very routine there. What was not, in my opinion, routine was the unusual noise, animal source never found. A constant coughing sound I'd describe best like a cat coughing up a fur ball, but no change in pitch, volume, or cadence. It sounded like a sound effect generated by a studio. Certainly, what animal has the lung capacity and vocal cords to generate this very strange sound? Tell you what, this was almost as worrying than the sighting itself. On this day, I just came to the decision to ignore the sound and continue hunting. This particular forest trail has two small rises along my direction of travel. To the east and over the second hump, a small game was frequently seen. I think because the main road was far enough away that small animals felt safer behind the second mound. Soon I heard what was larger than a rabbit just off to my right, and I was later than usual arriving there, and the daylight was rapidly fading. Thankfully, this was at the intersection of the two trails, and I seated myself on a large rock on the opposite side of the trail and sat looking in the direction. With my trusty shotgun across my lap, I felt very confident in my ability to protect myself, and I always kept 2 shotgun slugs, really handy to swap out the bird shot in my over and under just in case I had a bear encounter at close range. I seen this dog-like animal as it came around a large tree. It had dog-like ears and a dog-like snout, but its front legs were certainly longer than its back legs. Never seen this before or since. Also appeared to have very muscular back and chest, almost hunchbacked to me. Was this a wolf with a deformed, broken back, or the now 10,000-year extinct American hyena? I didn't know, and I have seen several wolves in the past, and innumerable coyotes, fox, so I feel pretty well qualified to speak about the canine animal. Also, its incisor teeth looked unnaturally long, and I think it had a grayish coat with some strange yellowish or red patches on its back. Very hard to confirm in the dusky light. Its eyes had a strange yellowish color to them. I was unsure whether to shoot it or not, but decided to leave this area immediately. I know well enough not to run as to appear to be prey to a predator, but kept my loaded shotgun at the low ready just in case, stopping often to check my six, just like an infantry soldier on patrol. I left and never actually returned to that spot. On another occasion, I heard the large animal getting up in the woods at least twice in a totally different place, again, while small game hunting. I had a distinct feeling I was being watched. This was near a registered trap line, I later discovered, so it was easy to find an excuse not to return there. Some months later, I found 2 thoroughly mutilated calves and a cow someone really took their time with. Again, at a different location, about 10 miles from here as the crow flies. The cow had an ear tag, and I reported it to the RCMP. They told me in a later phone call this incident was forwarded to the local livestock inspector. I must say perhaps just rustled cattle butchered right there, but seems stupid, as it is at corner, very busy forest road. Maybe a mutilation, maybe not. I just hope these strange occurrences are it for me. I had a recent health scare, and I don't need any more drama in my life. Thanks, guys, for listening. Today's second encounter. My friend in this story I am still friends with to this day. He grew up in the mountains, living off the land in Grayson County, Virginia. He and his family are recognized as members of the Pamunkey Native American Nation. Once I had an encounter in the woods in his backyard. He explained to me it was a manifestation of a forest spirit similar to what the Slavs call the Leshy. It's amazing the things this man knows about. Really, he is just a wealth of knowledge and a great human being. So we were working construction on the outskirts of Harrisburg, Virginia, Shenandoah Valley. When the weekend came, we decided to stop and go to his cousin Lee's land, way out in the mountains, several winding dirt roads off of Highway 33. Now, let me tell you, Cousin Lee's got an old-school mountain cabin, still heated by wood-burning stove. Also, Cousin Lee's very simple, as a result of his childhood head trauma. He is by no means dumb, just like Sling Blade simple. So we're over there, having a good time grilling some deer he had shot on the side of the mountain, and I noticed padlocks on what appeared to be a refuse bin. Of course, I inquired, and the response I got was, "Those mother effers will dig in my trash and throw shit everywhere if I don't lock 'em up." Cousin Lee burned what he could and took the remains to the dump, a very common practice in the area. So I was assuming he was talking about raccoons, and the man is simple, so he's being overdramatic. We went in to eat, and no one put the lock back on the refuse bin, which had the remainder of the deer carcass in it. Dinner goes by without a hitch, and after cleaning up, we decided to sit down and smoke some mountain grass. We're smoking out, no alcohol, having a good time, playing some old records, bands like Led Zeppelin and stuff, when all of a sudden we hear a loud thud on the roof, followed by 2 quick steps and then silence. I have no idea what just happened. I just know I'm scared shitless. Cousin Lee exclaims, "It's them. They better not be in my trash," and goes into his room and comes out with a shotgun. My friend will call. Jay goes and grabs 2 handcrafted walking sticks out of the corner. I'm still oblivious, but my friend Jay and his cousin Lee are headed to the back door, like it's some routine. I then witness Jay bust out the door first with the 2 big sticks, waving them in the air while making this strange growl-like noise. After Jay gets about 10 feet out the door, out comes Lee with the shotgun, but he's waving it above his head, making the same crazy growling noise. At this point, I'm just too curious about the situation and I head for the door. When I got to the door, the pungent odor of bear shit. I poke my head out the door and I see this hairy man dressed in tattered rags and caked with mud, trying to gather the deer parts from the refuse bin. I look up and there's another one on top of the shed, but he's perched almost like a gargoyle, wearing only what appeared to be a tattered vest. I'm drowning in awe of the situation. My mind's unable to fully process what's going on. I let out a scream. This seems to upset the trash digger. He starts banging a piece of deer he had in his hand on the side of the bin. Cousin Lee takes out the shotgun, fires off a shot, and they take off. What really was horrifying was apparently there was one on the roof behind our backs the whole time. I saw it coming overhead and it landed on the shed the other one was on, and then in a single bound leapt into a tree. He successfully ran off with a piece of deer as well. Now this comes the real crazy part, the explanation. Cousin Lee says, "You never want to shoot one. They have a mighty big clan and they will come for you if you get one of them." Warning shots always scare him off. I just bust out, "What the fuck was that?" The response I got was, "Tree people." Apparently, people have gone into the forest and lived and survived. Ended up meeting up with the others and living in the woods. This has been going on for a long time, apparently. They've lived for several generations in the wilderness as feral people. Apparently, they steal clothing off the line, tools, anything they can get their hands on. And they also enjoy messing with people. Oh, and apparently they live in the trees thus. That is why they are called locally the tree people. Today's third encounter. This experience happened early spring of 2016. I had just turned 24. My friend and I had reached our main camping spot, Black Canyon Rim Campgrounds, just outside of Payson, Arizona. We'd usually travel out there 2 or 3 times a year. It's got incredible views and is only a couple hours away from the city. For the most part, the area is pretty secluded. A privately owned convenience store rested a few miles away, with a small town 20 miles before that. The entrance was on a dirt road directly off the highway, with a campground sign at the start of the road, marking local wildlife, any fire hazards, and general news relevant to camping folk. The pathing is mostly linear, with maybe one fork spanning several miles. We once traveled down the dirt road to see how far it'd take us. One of the paths would take you to another highway entrance with a ranger's tower halfway there. The other path led to a dead end. An abandoned cabin can be found on that path a few miles in, mostly hidden off in the distance behind some large foliage. The snow had mostly cleared up at this point, leaving for crisp air, a slight chill, and fauna becoming active again. We'd usually spot some wild horse, several deer, and tons of little critters whenever we'd come out this way. It really was a perfect time of year for a relaxing trip, just to get away from the city for a few days. We got in around 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. It was late for us, as we'd usually try to make it out there by noon, the latest. This trip was pretty spontaneous. We both had to work during the coming weekend and decided to just go for it. The sun was setting fast, and we still hadn't picked our spot. There were maybe 2 other groups, both families parked somewhat close to the entrance, only a few hundred yards away from the highway. This time around, we just wanted to get away from humans for a while. Customer service jobs will do that to you. We drove down the dirt road past our usual spot and finally picked the perfect place. A small clearing just hanging off the edge of a hill. The whole valley could be seen from this area, with a beautiful sunset. This would have been our main spot from then on, if the next night's incident had never happened. We agreed to get a campfire going, and we'd just avoid building a tent this trip. We didn't have much time to do it anyway, so her car wasn't that uncomfortable. I'd slept in the back seat and she took the passenger with the window slightly ajar. We had some blankets for each of us and would fall into an unrivaled slumber. The next day went fairly uneventful. We just decompressed. I had a strange feeling throughout the day, though, like we were being watched. There were crunching of leaves just out of sight every few hours, but I figured it was local wildlife doing their thing. My friend didn't notice anything unusual, so I didn't dwell on it. Night came and the feeling still hadn't passed. My friend must have felt something. She didn't vocalize, though she took some of her sleeping pills. She didn't usually need them when we were camping. The nature's ambiance was enough to put anyone to sleep, I thought. It was nearing 1 a.m. My friend dozed off in the passenger seat while I attempted to wind down in the back. I leaned against the side window behind the passenger seat, legs outstretched to the car's back door. The window opposite of me was rolled down slightly, with a cold breeze flowing in. I'd been on my phone, scrolling through Facebook or whatnot, when I heard something outside. A few crunches of fallen leaves several paces outside the car. I whispered to my friend, "Did you hear that?" But she was already out. I put my phone down and listened intently for a minute. Nothing. It must have been a small animal curious about the camp. I went back on my phone, scrolling through social media, and about 10 minutes had passed when I heard it again. Crunch, right outside the door. I lowered my phone. My eyes took a moment to adjust. From the light of the phone into the deep dark woods. As I turned the phone away from me, the backlight illuminated the window above my feet, and to this day, I can't get the image out of my head. 2 dirty, scabbed hands held onto the window, the fingers wrapped inside of the car. The nails were long, unkempt, and dark. Beyond the window, a silhouette of a face was pressed up against it. The breath would create condensation every few seconds. All I could make out were the reflections of those empty, black eyes. I couldn't move, I couldn't scream. It felt like an eternity. The staring contest between me and this creature, thoughts were repeating incessantly in my head. Why didn't they run away when I saw them? What are they planning? Is this the face of death? After probably 10 seconds of not doing anything, the hand slowly unclinched the window and receded into the darkness. The condensation on the window also disappeared. Another couple seconds passed before I heard the dreaded crunch, 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 methodically fading into the darkness. I just sat there, going, what the hell just happened? Why didn't I do anything? Why am I still not doing anything? With that thought, my body shot into adrenaline. I pounded on my friend's seat, waking her up from her slumber into a dizzy confusion. I unlatched and kicked open the back door and took a moment to scan around. Whoever was there, whatever it was, is now gone. I scrambled to pick up any important camping supplies we left outside and just crammed everything into the back seat and trunk, periodically looking over my shoulder. Listened for those footsteps. I slammed the back door shut, and there they were. A grim reminder of horror that just happened. 2 handprints imprinted on the window. I quickly wiped them off of the window in a panic, a reaction to erase an event, I guess. I jumped into the front seat, started the car, and floored it out of there. My friend, finally, coming to, asked me what the hell I was doing. "We gotta go," I said. "There's something out there." I didn't see whatever or whoever it was fleeing the scene. Speeding down the dirt road, my friend insisted I slow down, and I eventually did. We reached the highway. I proceeded to drive 20 or so miles before we stopped at a rest stop, and I explained everything. The nightmares have subsided for a few months later. My embarrassment continues to this day for the state of shock I was in. Everyone says you either have a fight or flight instinct, and I'm confused whether I have either. I just sat there and did nothing. I frequently tend to ask myself what was out there. Was it a camper messing with us? The resident of the abandoned cabin on the dirt road? Or maybe something paranormal residing in the forest, watching lone, vulnerable campers as they drift off into dreamland. We still go camping there years ahead, but never too far from the highway. Whatever it was, I hope that was the last I have seen of it. Today's 4th encounter. This experience that my mother and aunts told me when I was in high school. I'm 21 now, and it has never left me. I think about it constantly and ponder over what happened. My grandfather passed close to a year ago on June of 2020. He was 96 when he died, and it caused some issues in the family. They don't really pertain to the story, but there are some things about him that I have to share in order to explain the story in the best way. My grandfather John was a man who was extremely old-fashioned. He was bitter, abusive, and complete macho man. My mother was raised, never showed emotion or pain due to his abuse and lack of compassion for others. He was also an extreme racist. He had many secrets that are now coming to light after his death. Everything that happened to him was brushed off and forgotten because he had more important things to do, like drinking and having an affair. Just an overall intense and very no-nonsense type of man. He also was not religious at all and found things like faith and hope stupid. This takes place sometimes in the 70s, most likely early to mid-70s. My mom was born in 65 and remembers this story clearly. My aunts as well remember this happening, but no one knows the exact year. One summer day, John decided to take his family on a small outing with the intent to have a picnic in the woods. This was an area located within the New Jersey Pine Barrens. My mother had 3 sisters, and her mother and grandmother were all there and very excited about this. Where we're from, my family is more than accustomed to the woods and has lived in this area for generations. Going into the woods for fun family activity is nothing out of the ordinary, and seemed to be just another normal day. Made their way down that dirt road and stopped once they found a clearing large enough to accommodate them all. As all the kids started to jump out the car and mess around, as kids do, being stuck together, my grandmother began to unload the food and picnic supplies. John began to survey the land and decided where to set up. As he was doing that, something in the woods past the clearing caught his eye. Before going to see what it was, he yelled to the family and said he'd be right back. The kids and my grandmother thought not much about it, since they were all used to the woods, and these woods in particular, they were very familiar with. They continued unloading and setting up stuff they had brought. One of the girls pointed out something in the clearing that caused a sudden shift from a normal day to something far worse. It was a dirt mound that looked like something had been buried under it. The mound was about the size of a small person, maybe even child-sized. It was too big to simply be an animal, any animal in these woods. There was nothing but squirrel and raccoon in the area. Scattered amongst the mound was some river rock. There was no pattern, but they were definitely placed on the mound intentionally. Also, the dirt seemed to be fresh, as though just buried. It was loose and slightly darker than the area around it. The mood immediately shifted from an average day in the woods to something much darker. My grandmother became concerned and told the girls to stay away from it. She was clearly upset and worried, but did her best to ignore it. The girls all began to play again. They didn't have the same amount of worry and continued to just screw around and just avoided the mound. They tried to return to their picnic, and the girls were already chasing each other in circles. It was supposed to be a joyous sunny day, and my grandmother wanted to keep it that way. Things seemed to return to a normal beat. The trees all around them created a wall of dense foliage, blocked their view from anything inside the forest. Once, one of the girls took notice of something strange. It was clearly immediate what it was. Along one of the long branches of the tree hung a noose. It was tied with a rope and hung high above their heads. A lump of dirt can be explained away by nature, but someone had to have placed the noose up there. My grandmother stopped dead in her tracks when she first saw it. Something was wrong, very wrong. They couldn't just pack up and leave. John was still out in the woods. Even the children can recognize a noose as a symbol of death. The children started to become anxious. Whatever innocence was keeping them from worrying about the mound had completely vanished. My grandmother, the resilient woman she was, soothed their children and told them that it was just left by deer hunters. But she knew in her heart they needed to leave. No deer hunter would hang a deer and then bury it. At least no sane deer hunter. It wasn't until they started hearing something in the woods that they began to really panic. My grandmother, as well as the children, began to hear a rhythmic chanting from deep in the woods. It sounded as though there was a group of people all singing in deep voices to the beat of a drum. It went in a quick bum 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 pattern, 3 steady beats, followed by a pause, and then it would repeat. It sounded far away, but immediately fear began to take hold of each of them. They each listened and gathered together. As the seconds passed, it began to increase in volume. It was getting not just louder, but closer. What started out as a distant echo soon began to engulf the entire clearing. My grandmother was terrified and wanted so desperately to leave, but John had yet to return. They waited, fear-ridden, as the sound began to fill their chests. It felt like they were at a concert as the deep bass would vibrate their chest. It was everywhere and constant, as though the sound was being made by the trees themselves, surrounding the family in every direction. Suddenly the sound of yelling broke through that constant drone of chanting. John's voice was yelling out to them from the trees. "Go," he yelled. "Get in the car." He came running out of the woods, yelling that they needed to leave. They had never seen terror in this man as they had that moment. He was a man afraid of nothing, unbothered by the world around him. This was the most emotion any of them had ever seen from him. He saw something in the woods, something that shook him to the very core. My grandmother began throwing everything back in the car as the kids got in as well. John and my grandmother picked up their things and, as quick as possible, threw it all into the car. They had no care for the things They were packing up due to their fear. Food was all over the trunk. The items were broken. After everything was tossed in, they both jumped in the car and drove away. This is where the main grunt of the story ends, but one fact from the story is what really has caused me to wonder all these years. My grandfather has refused to ever speak of what he saw. He never told any of the children or my grandmother. Every time this was brought up, he quickly changed the story and said he did not want to speak of it again. He never went to the police or told anyone outside of the family. My grandfather is the only person who knows what happened that day. When I first heard the story, I swore to myself that I would ask him one day. Now I can't. I regret it greatly. By the time I was in high school, he had moved out of state with another family, and I mostly lost contact with him outside of an occasional happy birthday call or letter. The story doesn't have an answer to go with it. When he died, the only thing I was sad about was never knowing what happened that day. We weren't close when I got older, and once I learned of all the abuse he had caused, I separated myself from him. His death looms over me, and this story still haunts me to this day. My mother and aunts just look back on it as a spooky memory of their childhood. Nothing more than a story to spook the little ones with at Thanksgiving. I'm one of the only people in the family who is still curious about what happened. I've always been interested in mysteries, the occult, horror, and conspiracy theories. This story piqued my interest more than any others in my family. By the way, this isn't the only strange story from my family, but it definitely is the most strange. I wish I had some answers. The Pine Barren are strong in native people's energy, namely the Lenape Delaware tribe. This may have an influence occult practices. I have read and heard similar accounts over the years, and believe that this may be another example. Was human or animal sacrifice involved? I believe that there was definitely something. I imagine John would have been scared by this type of activity, no matter how callous he was. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. As you can tell by my voice, I feel like absolute crap. I have 101.8 temperature. My eyes burn because I'm either so dehydrated or hot. I'm not really sure. I think it's both. And I feel like a big pile of dog shit. So, but I needed to get something out to you guys. Anyway, I appreciate it. So I'm sorry for any mistakes that I made in my narration today. Something that really bothered me yesterday. There was a guy who had some really just nasty words to say. I have not felt good for a while, and a lot of you know that. And I mispronounced malevolent a couple times. And I didn't realize it until I heard the upload, and I was like, oh god, it's too late to fix it. I'm just gonna push on and move on. But this man had some choice words to say to me. So, I don't know. I apologize. People are really tough on their keyboard, aren't they? You know, or lack of respect. I don't know. But, yep, like he said, I need to get on hooked on phonics, so maybe I will. Just kidding. But anyway, I hope you guys have a good day. Thanks for always listening, and thanks for the support. With that, farewell, and see ya!